Landing softly against the ball has a lot to do with alignment. And so by the time you are able to land consistently, that is more than 75% of the time against the ball, you want to start paying attention to how soft you are in any shape when you practice with your ball. And if you are freestanding, this is where you learn to enter the balancing zone with more softness and control, and therefore maximize your chances at holding your handstand. Let's recap the progressions. First, we want to be able to touch the ball with one foot or both feet. Then we want to be able to land on the ball, that is, stay on the ball once we have reached the ball. Then we want to be able to land softly, so control the momentum and the power with which we land. And finally, we want to be able to float before we land. So we kick up, we float first for a few seconds, and then we land on the ball. What matters when you think of the progressions is that you will have to improve the consistency, of course. Landing on the ball 1 time out of 10 is not the same thing as landing on the ball 10 times out of 10. And so before you jump to the next progression, you want to ensure that you work also on the consistency. A few more things. When it comes to touching the ball, we don't really pay attention to alignment. We want to get there in the first place, no matter what it takes. At some point, we'll be able to reach the ball and to stay against it for more than 2 seconds. And that's what we define as being landing on the ball, which is different from just bouncing out of it. So don't confuse touching and landing on the ball. Then comes the part where we want to start integrating our alignment into our kickups. And that's where the counterweights come handy. When it comes to landing softly, we're going to have our counterweights ready, otherwise we will bang against that ball. Which is even more true when it comes to floating before we land, only we may have to use the fingers on top of everything else. By the time you can consistently land on the ball, you then want, therefore, to assess the lightness of your landing. And for that, you're going to use your counterweight method. So drawing a line again from the center of the hands all the way up to the ceiling, assess where your 3 counterweights, your pelvis, your first leg, and your second leg, are in space. Remember, everything that's past that vertical line is overshot, everything that's before that vertical line is undershot. And in this scenario here, I have all 3 counterweights overshot. My pelvis and both legs are all driving me towards the ball, which prevents me from being light against it. This logic applies to every single shape. So in order to make myself lighter, I'm going to move one of those counterweights away from the overshot zone into the undershot zone. In this case, I'm working on the split leg variation, so I'm going to use the left leg in order for me to make the overshot leg a bit lighter against the ball. So much so that if I should continue lowering that leg, that right foot would peel off the ball. You are going to work on this for a few sets, a few sessions, or even a few months until you really know exactly where the undershot limb or limbs have to sit for you to be light against the ball. Once I have figured out how low this undershot leg has to be, I can try kicking up in that shape already, which will decelerate the way you land against the ball. The process through which we change the position we have once we have landed against the wall for the sake of making ourselves lighter against that wall will be referred to as reshaping in the Handstand Academy. Let's take a pike position now. I land bum and feet on the wall, so I'm too heavy against that wall because all 3 counterweights are past vertical in the overshot zone, pulling me way too heavily towards that wall. So for me to achieve a straddle, I'm going to lower my legs and spread them apart until they are enough in that undershot zone for the shape to be viable, which is light against the wall, after which you can actually balance. Looking at a close shoulder angle, the same may happen. I'm going to try to make one foot lighter against that wall by lowering the other leg. Next thing you know, you can push on the fingers and take off. Be mindful to only change one thing at a time. Otherwise, you won't be able to pin down what allowed you to be light in the first place. Reshaping this way will eventually allow you to already land in that desired position and therefore decelerate or even float before you land, which is a prerequisite for us to be able to freestand. So one more time, if you land too heavily against that wall, something has to change and you cannot work on taking off until that has happened. Mindfully modify the placement of one of your 3 counterweights or both if you're working on pike variation. We're going to call this reshaping. Make whatever was left on the wall light, and voila, you achieved a light, viable shape from which you can balance. This is the shape you want to land in every single time for the next few months/years. This eventually has to be on demand.